Welcome to Hockey Wanderlust's 5-minute major, which is usually a 10-minute misconduct. Rob Simpson, along with my dear friend and cohort in New York, actually Long Island, Ken Yaffe. Say hello to the folks, Ken Yaffe.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of 5-Minute Major.
Look at you. And it is our distinct honor to have Brett Forrest on with us today. He writes about national security for the Wall Street Journal. I could go through dude's entire resume, but we probably then only have like a minute and a half left to actually speak to him. He's done pretty much everything all around the world, controversial, dangerous stuff along the way. And he's also written, and this is our topic for today, a book, an international bestseller called The Big Fix. And before we get jumping right into it, let's introduce Brett Forrest. Brett, thank you for being here.
Hey guys, great to see you both.
As Ken pointed out just before we started, Brett's written most of those books behind his head, so it's very, very impressive.
I said he's read them, but he's
read. Oh, so he read most of the books. Sorry. Let's just go right to the big fix. I mean, the gambling stuff and like Bally's, I don't even go through the list right now. It's insane. So give us the gist of what you were getting after with the big fix, your international bestseller.
Yeah, well, the big fix is really about match fixing in international soccer.
Yep.
If you think about it, that's where most of the betting is in a global sense, the global handle on sports betting. The vast majority of it is on soccer. And the book is really, it's a bit of a two-hander. It's about one guy who's the sort of wears the white hat in the issue. He was the head of security at FIFA, which was the international governing body for soccer. And the other guy in the story is the most notorious match fixer, a guy out of Singapore, going around the world corrupting players and officials and coaches and managers, etc. So the story is really about the two of them chasing each other around the globe and gets inside the whole phenomenon.
Brett, as you think about the work you did and the focus on football globally, and then you sort of extrapolate the evolving, your learnings and the evolving North American sports betting landscape. If you're the commissioner of the National Hockey League, what's keeping you up at night about the evolution of the betting culture in the NHL?
Well, boy, I know that there's a lot of ink being spilled about the integrity of the game. I mean, that's fundamental, of course. Why do we go to games? Why do we watch games? Well, basically because we don't know how they're going to end, because we believe that what we're seeing is real. And that's what a match fixer takes away from us. A match fixer attacks the integrity of the game. So if you don't have that, you don't have anything. So that first and foremost is the principal concern, I think, of anybody involved in the game, either from a business standpoint or even just as a casual fan. But we don't want that to overshadow what really, to me, seems to be just an expansion of a business opportunity here for the league and for clubs and for sports books and casinos and everybody else who's related to the gambling industry. I don't want to overplay that, but that is a fundamental concern, of course.
And obviously, we can't cover everything that's in the book and in your process. You went deep and dark into the underbelly of match fixing, and you talk about the handle in Asia and the fact that soccer carries the global football carries the biggest handle. Is hockey, what you know about match fixers and what you know about the game? Brett grew up a Flyers fan. Is hockey interesting to a match fixer?
It is. Any game that's listed on international sports books is a possibility. As long as it's listed, and people are betting on it, and you can make money if you have an edge, then why not try and produce an edge for yourself? Conversely, I would say that the most attractive opportunities for match fixers are sports and particular matches and games that have a lot of betting on them. that bring a lot of business and create a very liquid market, because the more liquid the market is on a particular game, the easier it is for you to hide fraudulent bets. And fraudulent bets, by saying that, I mean bets that are tied to foreknowledge, bets that are tied to fixing operations. So the more honest bets, the easier it is to hide the fake bets. So hockey does not draw a ton of betting, so it's a little bit further down the list in terms of things to worry about.
But looking ahead, when you see that Bally's is now running 12 of the 13 or owning 12 of the 13 regional sports networks, and just came out the other day promoting the fact that they're going to be, oh, sit at home, watch the game, and here's all your gadget bets, whatever terminology you want to use there. In other words, I can bet on second period scoring who's going to do this next, who's going to do that next in real time as a game unfolds. So as that volume increases, and as hockey's prominence does increase with its gambling related businesses, does that threat, I don't want to take a cynical viewpoint, but does that threat not loom?
I don't really think it does, because every single person who's going to be betting on these games is going to be doing so legally and honestly. Mm-hmm. You know what it takes to fix a match? I mean, you need to get to know players, or you need to get to know referees. You need to get to know club officials. You need to get close to these guys, and you need to present them with a business plan, essentially. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of guile and cunning. It takes financing, and it takes finding people who are vulnerable and want to get involved in your scheme. That's pretty sophisticated.
And the reason we're talking about all of this week is because just as you've had this influx of sports book prominence in the hockey content space, we have a situation with Evander Kane out in San Jose. I think you followed it a little bit this week. I don't want to put you on the spot. There's actually not a lot of information out there. He was accused by his wife or ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife of betting on hockey, and then she went so far as to suggest that made allegations that he had actually thrown games. Obviously, a lot to unpack there. But what's your POV on what went down this week with Kane?
Right. I did read those tweets that she sent out, and of course, very serious accusations, but no evidence provided. And that's really the key, isn't it? And we all know, having been in personal relationships and marriages, there's a lot of emotion there. I would say on the surface, that's initially what it looks like, unless you can show me evidence.
Right. And betting on hockey is one thing. Betting on your own team is another thing. And then obviously throwing a game, yet another silo that is,
A forward can only do so much. He can overskate a puck, or he can fall down. I mean, let's face it. Maybe a D guy falls down and gives up a couple breakaways, but a goalie would have maybe an opportunity. I think this is more personalized. It's not like systematic. It's more likely that a referee, kind of like we saw in the NBA, regardless of whatever the sport is, he might be heavy into it and say, oh, you know what, I can place bets, and I can maybe determine an outcome that way. But that's an individual. That's not.
Well, what does football tell you about that and your study there, Brett?
Yeah, good question. I mean, the games are similar in that sense, because the way they set up, you have a net, you have a goalie, you have defenders, and you have, then lines of players out from there. The closer you get to the net, that the easier it is to fix a match or fix a game, obviously, because when you're fixing a game, you're fixing to lose, or you're fixing to lose in a certain time frame, or you're fixing to let in a goal. The fix is never to score, obviously. So you're right that if he's a winger, if he's a forward, it's a bit harder to manipulate the outcome, or at least manipulate a portion of the game. But not impossible, because keep in mind too that some of these fixes that we've seen in other sports around the world, they don't involve one player. It's not one player. It's several players on a team. They're in it together, and they're being controlled by a match fixer. So it could be a winger, it could be a winger defenseman, it could be a winger defenseman goalie, it Could be those three and a referee. It could be a coach who says, I'm going to sit this guy tonight. Or it could be a general manager who says, I'm going to sit this guy. Or, maybe I'll send him down the minors. Or maybe I'll trade this guy. I mean, it goes that deep. It can go that deep.
Actually, I'll take it one further, Brett. The blurred lines between sports media content and sports book platforms is growing by the day, with strategic alliances between major brands, the Hockey News and MGM, Bally's, the example that was mentioned earlier by Rob, and their acquisition of RSNs that'll carry NHL, MLB, NBA, and other sports content. So in theory, a sports journalist or sports content creator could also be part of that fix.
That one is a little bit harder for me to imagine, because I think with all these things, it's really tantalizing to say, oh my goodness, here's this new entity that's entering our world, that's entering the sport that we love and that we've been a part of for so many decades. It's an unknown entity. It's perhaps a little scary, but that's okay. That's a natural feeling. What's important is really getting to the specifics. And I think the point that you just brought up sort of falls into the former camp. It sounds like something threatening, but what is it really? I mean, I don't understand how a media company that's owned by a sports book is going to influence the outcome of a game. The only way I can imagine is if the sports book that owns the media outlet directs one of its journalists or reporters not to share pertinent information with the betting audience, such as an injury to a player. But I mean, that could happen, sure, but it's slightly hard to imagine, I have to say.
I would think the vulnerabilities, this is an international hockey newsletter and a European hockey newsletter. I would think the vulnerabilities, you were in Russia for a half dozen years. That's an interesting situation. And I would think lower tier European teams where a guy's making 30,000 euros and playing D somewhere, or a goalie, that might be where the tentacles could reach. And it wouldn't be a big handle necessarily, but it might be a temptation.
Well, you are spot on. That is really the point of the whole fixing world, is who is vulnerable. The more money you're making, the greater the risk. So why would you risk your salary and your future and your reputation? But you're right. If you're making not so much, and you're looking forward, and it's not like you're going to be playing forever, and not like there's ever going to be big money in your future, maybe you will. Maybe you'll do it. You listen to somebody, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
On your Russia experience, Brett, you spent 6 years there. The time you were there, you had a chance to see an evolution of hockey and the emergence of the KHL. And I don't want to go off topic too much, but can you give us some insights there, and any experience in the betting space when you were there watching Russian sport?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, I was there before the KHL was established, and it was the Russian Super League, which was a fantastic league. I mean, probably the second best league in the world. It's arguable, but great offensive players for sure. And I remember going to see games at CSKA, the former, well, it was CSKA back then, of course, but then there was that period when they were Russian Penguins for a while. That predated me, but being in that arena and then just being part of that experience. Look, growing up seeing the Soviet Union teams, 1980, all that, and suddenly being there as Russia was changing was a fascinating lens, the hockey lens, to see it through. As far as betting, when I was there, it seemed pretty darn unregulated, the sports betting. I mean, there were a lot of sports books around town.
Shocker.
Yeah, right. A friend of mine in Kiev owned a sports book, and he sort of ran a casino, had a sports book in the casino, and it seemed like he was winning a lot. So, but then at some point, both countries sort of cleaned it up, and it's not as pervasive anymore. But those were fun days. Yeah,
and it's hard to imagine in those years. And I remember, going back 20, 25 years ago, you found sports books in many European hockey rinks, right in the rink, and you never could have imagined legalized sports betting in North America at that time, let alone sports books in rinks. And we're going to have our first one announced was the Washington Capitals and the Wizards are going to have a sports book in the rink. And there's one planned for Wrigley Field in baseball. And I suspect before too long, we'll see the majority of sports venues in North America with sports books right in the brick and mortar.
Yeah, and that gets right to your central concern, which is the integrity of the game. And I think you guys are right to be thinking about this and discussing this, because anytime there's money to be made, there's going to be the temptation to try and get an edge. Usually the edge is in information. When you're talking about betting on sports, that's when you get to the highest levels of people betting legally and honestly, it's really about math. It's about quants. It's about getting that little sliver of an edge based on information that you can accumulate about a club, a team, players, etc. That's totally different from match fixing, of course. But yeah, I mean, think about the point shaving scandals that we saw way back. I guess it was in the 80s, maybe in the 70s as well, college basketball. I mean, it can happen, and it might happen, and that's why I'm sure the NHL is taking a lot of steps, and individual clubs are as well, to just keep an eye on players and keep an eye on the action.
Brett, it's fascinating material. It's a future that's going to be amazing to watch unfold here as a business and the relationship between sports and business. We thank you very much. I guess one parting question is, will the Flyers make the playoffs this year?
Does it even matter? I mean, they can't win the cup. I mean, it's like, it's just every year. It's a torture, man. It's a torture.
Poor bugger. The Big Fix, that's one of his books. Check it out. And it's back there. Yeah. We'll throw out your social media information as well. We thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Kenny. Great talking to you guys.